Hi, this is Alex from PHP Academy and welcome to this tutorial on commonly used string functions. Now, after working on a few projects, I've decided to combine a list of string functions that I most commonly use and that you should probably be aware of. If you don't use these in any projects, it would surprise me somewhat, obviously depending on what you're doing, but you know, the majority of these, or all of them, you should at least know about. And I'd say definitely six out of the 7 you should be using on a regular basis if you're doing any sort of worthwhile project. So I'm basically haven't planned anything out. I'm just going to run through the list and try and sort of make up some examples on the spot, and then we can, you know, sort of take a look at what they do, you know, how they should be used, where they should be used, etc., etc. So the first one is string length, to determine the length of a particular string. Now you might think that this is only used, say, in form validation, but it's not. It can also be combined with the next function that I'm going to go over, and that's substring. But we'll take a look at string length first, or strlen, as most PHP functions are shortened this way. Let's just take a look at the function itself. It's str and then len. Obviously we've got our parentheses here in which a string would go in. So if I was to say strlen Alex and echo that out, this function will return an integer, and that will be the amount of characters are in a particular string you pass through. So in this case it will be 4. So let's go over to our browser and let's refresh, and you can see that we returned an integer 4. Now obviously this can be stored in a variable, so I could say name len equals string length Alex, and then I could echo something like let's just say your name has name len characters, okay? And then when we refresh, we've used that data that we've stored. Obviously you can pass in a variable here, so we could pass in a variable called name, and the name could be equal to Alex. So we can use this function, you know, any way we want, as we would normally pass through you know, variables into a function. But the string length function, very useful for determining the string length of a particular input. And obviously that can be input from your user as well. So for example, you might say max len equals 10. You might then say, let's just say input equals $_get name, and then we could create an if statement, and we could say if something. So this would be if the string length of input is greater than max len. We could echo out, sorry, too long. Otherwise, we could just echo, okay. So if we refresh, obviously we've got an undefined index here, and we've got an OK message. Obviously we haven't validated properly. If we were to pass our parameter name, if I did Alex, that would be okay. If I did say Alex James Garrett, sorry, too long, because we've reached the maximum length, which is 10 characters. So we can use this in a variety of ways, but obviously if at any point while you're creating or writing code, the fact that you need a string length in you know, for form validation or whatever, then obviously strlen is the function to use. The next is substring. I'll move quite quickly on because I explained that too much, I think. Substring, which takes a chunk of a string and only outputs that out. So let's say name equals, oh dear, name equals Alex James Garrett. Let's just say I wanted to take the first 4 characters of this string. Not that you'd know the first, you know, the user's first name, but or the length of the user's first name. But I could echo out substring, so sub being part of and string being a string. This is going to typically take 3 parameters. It can take 2, but I won't go into that. I always prefer to specify 3, it just makes a lot more sense. And I'm going to say name, the starting point, and how many characters you want to say snip from that point. So from 0, obviously this function takes, as PHP does, 0 indexes everything. So this would be 0, this would be 1, L would be 1, E would be 2, and X would be 3. So I want to take 4 from 0, I believe 4 there. So 4 characters starting from 0, including that character. So 0, 1, 2, 3, but we've actually taken 4 from 0. So not really complicated, but you know, it can get any explanation. So when I refresh there, you get Alex, the value Alex. So I've taken 4 characters from the start. Again, we could bump that up to say 9, and you can see that, you know, we get that without the S because we've only selected 9 characters. Now, earlier in the tutorial, I said that we can combine strlen and substring. Now, let's just say you just want to display an article, for example, a preview of an article, so the preview text of an article, and you wanted to cut it off at a certain point. So I'm going to say body equals, this is an article, it's quite, just escape that character with a backslash, it's quite long, and could go on for some time, leaving you no room on the page. Okay, just as an example. So if we go ahead and echo out body and refresh, you can see that we just get that text. Now what we want to do is, if this is longer than a certain amount of characters, we want to snip it off at the end and add a few dots. So what we can actually do is we can say body equals, and we can say if the string length of body, so we're reassigning the text to body, but we're checking the string length at the same time. So if the string length of body is greater than 10, so, or let's say 20, greater than 20, then we want to set body to substring body 0, 20, and then we want to concatenate on 3 dots, otherwise body. So let me just take a while to explain this because the syntax might be unfamiliar to you. What we're saying here is we're saying assign this value to body, i.e. the cut down version of body, so 20 characters with dots on the end, if the string length of body is greater than 20. Otherwise, just give body. That would mean it would be less than 20 characters. So if, for example, now I go and refresh, you can see that it's cut it down. Well, we've got a space here, so it makes it look a bit awkward. But let's change this to 25 and change this to 25 and refresh. Okay, so this is an article, and we've cut ourselves off. That's because it's greater, the string length is greater than 25. If, for example, I just have this is an article and I refresh, you see that the dots aren't present because the string length is less than 25 characters. So we can combine these two functions. They're, you know, extremely useful to be combined to sort of cut down an amount. If you are, you know, displaying a preview text of an article, for example, that's recently what I've used it for. And then maybe here you could add sort of like a read more link or something like that. You know, it's optional, but the functionality is there, and it's extremely, you know, easy logic if you think about it. Okay, so the next function that we're going to look at is str to lower. Now we do have an str to upper function as well, but I don't commonly use this, although it's sort of, you know, the same thing. I don't commonly use this. So str to lower converts the string that's provided within the parentheses to lowercase. So for example, name equals Alex with a capital A, which we always tend to provide names with capital letters. So I'm going to echo str to lower name. So let's go to our browser and refresh, and you can see that my name has been completely converted to lowercase. So even if I was to say put a capital E and an X in there, small l, it's still converted to lowercase. Now you might think, why on earth would you commonly use this function? Why would you need to? Well, really I can't demonstrate in code, but the theory is if you're storing, say, a username, so if, for example, I signed up on a forum and my username was Alex James Garrett, okay? So my username on the forum is Alex James Garrett. Now every time I go to log into a forum or a username, anywhere that requires a username and a password, for example, I want to compare my username in the database with the username that's been given. Or for example, anywhere else that matter that my username may be typed in. For example, it might be typed in an email form, or someone might want to go and send me a private message on a forum. The problem with this is, if for example someone defines my name but doesn't use a capital A, a capital J and a capital G, what's going to happen is a match might not be successful. So when you're storing user information, such as a username that could be typed by a user, either by the user logging in or someone else on the site, it's extremely useful to keep a lowercase version. So username LC equals str2lower username. Now what I can then do is, if for example input was Alex James Garrett, so with a capital A, not a capital J and not a capital G, I could then do if str2lower input is equal to username lowercase echo. Okay, so I'm converting the user input to lowercase, therefore I know however they've cased the input, it'll always compare if it's exactly the same characters. So we're essentially using this process, we're completely ignoring case altogether. So str_lower, you might not think you'd be using it, but obviously when you're taking user input such as a username, an email address, anything like that, it's always good practice to store a secondary version of that data in lowercase. So that's 3 of our functions. In the next part of the tutorial I'm going to talk about 4 more functions.